Lauren Greci, and you are listening to the Lifestyle with Lauren podcast, the show where we chat all the things: life, motherhood, Jesus, food, beauty, and wellness, and so much more. So grab a hot cup of coffee, kick back, and relax with us. I hope that you find joy, laughter, and encouragement today and every day. Thanks for being here. Hey friends, and welcome to the Lifestyle with Lauren podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Greci, and I'm so glad you're here. Today, I have a dear friend, Maddie Bowen, to discuss adoption and foster. She and her husband, Matt, have 2 adopted children and 3 biological, and we talked all the things, so I can't wait for you to hear my conversation with Maddie. Hey friends, and welcome to the Lifestyle with Lauren podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Greci, and I'm so glad you're here. Today, I have a dear friend, Maddie Bowen, to discuss adoption and foster. She and her husband, Matt, have 2 adopted children and 3 biological, and we talked all the things, so I can't wait for you to hear my conversation with Maddie. I'm so excited to have Maddie Bowen here with us. Maddie is a Christian, a wife, a mom to 5 kiddos through, what's the best way to say it? Through foster, adoption, and biologically.
Yeah.
So yeah, Maddie, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, what Lauren said. I am a mom to those 5 kids. I have 4 girls, 1 boy. The youngest is a boy, poor thing. Just has a lot of moms going on over here. Married to Matt for 9 years.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know. Yep, that's it.
Yeah. So how did you and Matt meet?
Let's see. So it's kind of like comes at us from a lot of different angles.
Okay.
I grew up at a small church in Arlington, was there like elementary, junior high, high school, and even into college a little bit. And when I was like 15 years old, Matt was brought on staff at our church as the worship leader. And at that point, Matt's older than me. So at that point, he was in college and I was in high school. And we were like definitely not on each other's radars. I actually think that my mom tried to set my oldest sister up with Matt, but no one will admit to that, but I'm pretty sure that happened. But then fast forward a few years, I'm finally in college. Matt's still in college because he was in college for a long time. Matt's sister, I nannied for Matt's sister. And so I got to know like his whole family. I went on vacations with them. I spent a lot of time with them, but never Matt's because he was, off doing his college thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then hit my mom, and it's so complicated. Okay, my mom and Matt's sister started talking, and they were like, "We want to set these people up." So they did a lot of behind the scenes scheming, and eventually it worked. And Matt asked me out on a date to get ice cream. And I mean, the rest is history. We dated for 9 months. We were engaged for 9 months. And then we got married.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful story though. I love it. So where did he take you for ice cream? Do you remember?
I do. Yeah. It's called Pure Bliss. And I don't think it's there anymore. So it's kind of sad, but it was like a froyo kind of place.
Yeah.
And he actually hates froyo. So he was definitely taking one for the team by taking me there because I love it.
That's sweet. Okay, cool. Now you have mentioned very clearly that you are a Christian, that you have had a relationship with Jesus Christ for a long time. So can you kind of share your story, your testimony, your walk with the Lord, and what that has looked like for you over the years?
Yeah. So I grew up in a Christian household. I would say like a very high % of my memories revolve around some sort of church activity. Okay. So I was fortunate enough to come to know the Lord at a pretty young age. I think it was about 5th grade when I finally decided to like make that decision my own. But then honestly, like the years that followed, I felt like a poser, I guess you could say, because I, had been baptized and I had made the decision to follow Christ, but I wasn't feeling confident in my salvation because I had incorrectly linked salvation with like knowledge of the Bible. And it wasn't until I was in high school, and my youth pastor was like just amazing. Side note, he was like the best youth pastor. He really invested in me in my personal walk with Christ, and through his teachings and his leadership, I learned that you have salvation because of the decision you make and who you choose to follow. And that does not have to correlate with your knowledge of the Bible. I struggle with retention. Like when I read something, it doesn't stick in my mind very well or for very long.
I
So
think the number of children that you have as well
yes.
makes that go even less and less each time.
Right? I know. So if I was struggling with this in high school, just imagine my lack of retention now, 5 kids later. So just like through high school and college, and just like knowing that you don't have to know it all to have confidence in your salvation really was important for me to be able to grasp in order to develop a personal relationship with Christ just through reading the Bible. And, even if I sit down and read the Bible that morning and I don't remember what I read the next day, that's okay, because I can read it again.
Right.
So that was a pretty important like step in my personal faith walk, was just knowing that you don't have to know it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hear it all the time too, even from seasoned Christians who are older than us and who have walked this path, that, at 60, at 70, that they're still learning things from the Bible and things that they never knew. So that gives me a lot of hope too, knowing, if I feel defeated, if I feel like I don't know something, to just go, you know what? I'm only this age and there's still so much to learn, and there will always be so much to learn, and we're not going to know it all, but it's just that constant pursuit of, wanting to learn and wanting to have that relationship that I think makes the biggest difference.
Yeah, totally.
So as a busy mom, how do you find time to devote to the Bible and to reading scripture?
A lot of that happens right now from my phone. Your phone fits in your pocket, and if I find a few minutes here and there, then it's easy for me to take out my phone and either read it or have my these little handy things in and have it read over me. I think that there is a lot of value in like getting out your real Bible and reading it in front of your kids, because I think that sets a really good example for them. Right now, that doesn't happen very often for me. Most of the time, it's just picking up my phone when I have a chance and not opening up Instagram or Facebook, and sticking with my Bible app.
That, I think, is the hardest thing, is that, at least for me, whenever I open my Bible app, just that constant thought of, oh, it's right over there, it's right there, it's that, click, 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 click. It takes 2 seconds. And I kind of have that ADHD brain where it's like, if a text drops down at the top, I'm like, oh.
Oh yeah. That's what airplane mode is for, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good idea. I didn't think about that. Yeah, because the app is already preloaded, like your version.
Yeah.
So smart, Maddie. I need to do that. Yeah. And we kind of talked off recording a second ago that you're homeschooling your kiddos. So I know that you're probably getting a lot of scripture in too when you're homeschooling, but what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, I tried homeschooling my first when she was in kindergarten. It didn't go great. So we decided public school was going to be our route. And then COVID hit. And I thought homeschooling was hard before, but it turns out trying to do virtual schooling with one in kinder and one in second and 3 other kids around is even harder. So we decided to pull them out for this year and homeschool. And it is definitely a challenge. But I got a curriculum that just walks me through every single step. There is no prep work on my part, and it's biblically based, which is important, and I appreciate so much. And it's really just, even as hard as it is, there have been a lot of sweet moments that we've gotten I know we would have missed out on otherwise. So while our plan is to send them back to public school next year, I am really thankful for the gift that I've had of this year, getting to keep them home.
Yeah, absolutely. So then tell us about your kiddos. What are the ages? How old are they?
Yes. Okay, so I'm just going to use the letter of their name, so try to keep up. So, okay, I have L. She's my oldest. She is 8. Then we have number 2 is A. She is 6. six. Yeah, that's right.
You're doubting yourself. You're like, hold
I
on,
know
wait.
there's so many, and they're always changing. Number three is P, and she is 4, just turned 4.
She's 4 already.
I know. I
Oh
know.
my goodness.
Too fast, happens too fast. Number 4 in the lineup is FP, and she is 3. And then our little baby J is 1. So
And he's your only boy.
the only boy.
The only
Yep.
boy. So 1, 3, 4, 6, and 8.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So 5 under 8. Oh my goodness. When you say it like that, it's kind of like, oh.
Like, oh wow,
Right.
that is a lot.
Okay, so I know that you have 2 children that you have adopted. Can you let's kind of go into that realm of how did this all come about? You already had L&A, and what made you want to adopt? How did God work on your heart to open those doors?
Yeah. So I really, from a very young age, saw in my future that there would be some sort of foster care or adoption on my radar. My dad, growing up, always worked with like the vulnerable population of kids in one form or another. Um, and then when Matt and I were dating, I casually was like, when we adopt, and he was like, wait, what? We're not doing that. And I was like, oh, okay. And at that point, I was already in love with him, and I just thought, that's so far off. Like, let's just put it on the back burner for now. We don't need to talk about it. And then when we got married, we found out we were pregnant 2 months after we got married. So it's just like a very like fast and furious pace. So adoption was not on our radar for several years. And then when my second child was, I don't know, about a year, my sister suggested this book called Adopted for Life. I believe it's by, I don't want to get this wrong, but I think it's Russell Moore, I think. And the book is just, it talks about adoption and how Jesus has adopted all of us. And it relates us physically adopting children to, or caring for the orphan, or however that looks for your family. And it really just like relit that fire in my heart to pursue adoption. And, I brought it with Matt, and he was like, no, not happening. And it was really important to me that if we did choose adoption, because I knew it wasn't going to be easy, that he decided that like on his own with the Lord. And it wasn't something that I like beat him over the head with or like peer pressured him into. And so we like made a deal that he would slowly read through the book and that we would not talk about it for like 2 months. And so, I, kept my mouth quiet and just did a lot of praying alongside him while he was reading the book. And while I know he was like seeking the Lord's will here. And as soon as he finished the book, I remember we hired a babysitter and we went out to dinner, and we were like, all right, let's talk about this. And very quickly he was, expressed how he was on board, and that the Lord had just done a work in his heart to just, have a heart for the orphan, just like the Bible commands us to. So
how long was that process? You said about 2 months that y'all were kind of just praying and deciding over this before you went all in. And then what happened after you decided, let's do this?
Yeah. So at that point, we knew that we felt convicted to care for the orphan, but we had no idea what that looked like, because there are actually a lot of avenues to pursue that. I had done several mission trips overseas, so I just pretty much immediately thought, okay, we're going to be adopting internationally. And so we started to pursue that. And the more we looked into it, we quickly realized that we didn't qualify for an international adoption. I was, I think, I don't know, like 25 at this point. So very young. A lot of international adoptions require you to be 30. They have requirements on how many years you need to have been married, your income. And we didn't check a single box for like any country at the time. Countries are constantly changing their requirements, but at that point in time, we didn't. So that very quickly took international adoption off the table for us. And our next thought was, okay, then we are going to go all in on foster to adopt. And We met with 2 different agencies and just walked out of both of those meetings feeling like this doesn't feel right. We had a lot of specific questions that we asked, and their answers just didn't sit right with us. And I really just think that was just the Lord. He just knew that foster care for us at that point was not right. So at that point, we landed on a domestic infant adoption, which is how P came to us. And that's was a whole process that I knew nothing about. I knew about international adoption, I knew about foster care, but domestic infant adoption, I didn't know anybody that had done it. And it was, but once we landed on that, we did feel like just an instant peace that, okay, this is where we landed, and this is the agency we feel comfortable using. And at that point, things started to move a little bit quicker.
I remember you sharing the news, and I want you to share this about like the phone call and all of that, because your house, whenever you lived here in the Frisco area, was like walking distance to the church, and Matt, being the music minister at the church, was always there. So share everyone the story about that very special phone call.
Yeah, so our caseworker never called without having texted me first, because she knew that with waiting families, that a phone call from a caseworker can like get your hopes up when they shouldn't have been. So getting a phone call from her with no text before, I immediately knew that the call was going to be about a child, about a baby. And so I waited to call her back. I missed her call, obviously. And called Matt, and I was like, you need to come home. Charlotte called us, and she didn't text me first. So we knew it was going to be a big phone call. And luckily the kids were all in bed, so it was like perfect timing. It was nap time. And I, like you were saying, like we lived about a 2-minute walk from church. So I was just like anxiously staring out the window, like, come on, come on. And I see Matt like turn the corner from church, and he is just like booking it home, running as fast as he can. And I got my phone out. I was like, I need this on video. And I got
I remember that video.
Yeah, it's still like one of the sweetest videos, like just this excited, nervous, anxious dad just like running home just to hear anything he can about a potential child of his. So yeah, we got the call, and it sounded like a great match, and prayed over it for about 12 hours before we officially said yes. And then it was a little bit of a different circumstance for us. Some domestic infant adoptions, you match with the mom, like when she's expecting, and you get to develop a relationship there. And that's what we had assumed would happen. But in our case, our mom had already given birth and had chosen at the hospital that she was going to choose adoption for her baby. So by the time we got the phone call, P was, I think, like 2 or 3 days old. And we got to meet with the mom before they placed her with us. Afterwards, like actually just last year, we found out that the caseworker and our my child's biological mom had like a code, like when they did this, that meant this is official, like I like these people, we can actually place her baby with us. And so she did the code, and little P was brought in, and it was a really just special, sacred, like 2 or 3 hours that we got to spend all, me and Matt and this sweet little baby and this sweet little baby's mom all together, just like getting to know each other and just loving on this baby and hearing her hopes and her dreams and our hopes and our dreams for this child. Yeah, it was just a really sweet, tender time.
That's so amazing. And y'all still have a relationship with her mother, correct?
We do. Yes. Yeah. I mean, if we had it our way, we would spend far more time with her than we do. And of course, COVID has thrown a wrench in that. We are some of the few that are not the few, but we've chosen to like keep our circle pretty tight. So we're not doing very much. And actually same for her. So yeah, we see her every chance we get, and we do some FaceTime phone calls. But as soon as, things lighten up a little bit, we are just dying to like get our hands on her again, because she is like without a doubt one of the strongest, bravest, smartest, I mean, best women we know. She's real special.
That's amazing. And I love that P still has this relationship with her too,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
So now FP is 1 year younger than P.
Mm-hmm.
So was what was this looking like then? After you have P now for a while, how
Mm-hmm.
did you then decide to go, okay, let's do this again? But we wanted, because you're fostered to adopt, correct? So you went a little different route, or?
Yeah. So FP is still in the foster system.
Okay.
So her situation also was a little bit unique. So shortly after Jude was born in January, we started the process to become respite providers for some of our best friends that are foster parents. And being a respite provider is just a way to like tangibly serve a family that is fostering children. So we were going through that process, lots of classes, lots of paperwork. But once we got the ball rolling, they were able to start using us as respite. And we really just got to know this sweet girl even more. Our girls loved playing with her. She loved playing with our girls. And it was every time she came, it was crazy and hectic, but it was also really sweet. And then sometime in March, I believe, her case took a turn. In foster care, there nothing is predictable.
Mm-hmm.
And you think you might know where a case is going, and then things change. And at no fault of our sweet friends, they did need to find a different home for FP. And at that point, I was like 6-8 weeks postpartum with this
Right.
little baby that doesn't sleep, and just committed to praying with our friends that they would find the right home. And through that, Matt actually suggested, like, what would it look like if we pursued this? And I was like, no, like, are you crazy? Like, we have 4 with like this infant. And he pushed back, just kind of like how I did when we were pursuing our first adoption. And we just agreed to pray about it, and we didn't have this aha moment of like, this is for us, kind of like we did when we were pursuing our first adoption. It was more just like, well, we don't feel like the Lord is saying no, so we are going to just take one step forward until we feel like he says no. Because I think that sometimes it's easy as believers to just be like, well, I'm just waiting on the Lord to give me an answer.
Right.
When I think sometimes that's appropriate, but I also feel like sometimes it's like, just take a step, just like out of faith. And that's kind of that's what we landed on. It's just, we're going to start pursuing this one step at a time until it either happens or it doesn't. And it did. So that was probably in March. And then she was placed with us in August. So it was a long process to just get all the ducks in a row, and all that. COVID just throws a wrench into everything too, which made the process draw out, and just foster care in general, everything moves slow. So FP was placed with us in August, and she is still placed with us, and we are just loving on her for as long as we can. So that's where we're at.
That's awesome. So do you think you're going to continue to foster if either FP stays with you or goes to a different forever home? What do you kind of foresee, if you can share, you guys with FP and maybe either future foster opportunities?
Yeah, I always thought we would foster care like when our kids were older, like high school. I thought we would pursue foster care. So we neither of us saw it at this stage in our lives. But now that we're here and we're in it, it is really hard. So I don't know. When we started this process to pursue having her placed with us through foster care, we both kind of agreed that like, we are doing this for her. So like at this point, I can't imagine taking another placement to our house. But I also didn't think we would be foster parents right now. So the Lord, who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Y'all have the best, sweetest heart, and I know that your intentions are so wonderful. And I know that y'all are just loving on FP like she is going to stay with y'all forever. So y'all are pretty amazing
Wow,
people.
that's sweet.
So I know that foster care is challenging for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned. Things are constantly changing and things can change in an instant, it seems,
Mm.
even though the process seems to take a little bit, it's still sudden. So if someone is wanting to foster or adopt or it's on their radar, what would be some advice that you would give them for adoption and for foster care?
Um, it's a hard question to answer. Um, I would have different advice for someone that is doing like a domestic infant adoption as I would for someone doing foster care. Um, for like a domestic infant adoption, like how P came to us, I would say like get to know birth moms, get to know other adoptees. Before going into that, we had educated ourselves as we read all the books, all the things, but where we were lacking was listening to voices that were in it, um, that were different than ours. So I'm not talking about other prospective adoptive families. I'm talking about like the adults that were adopted and the birth moms who did choose adoption for their kids. Because I think those voices are the voices that you need to amplify and really pay attention to if that's the route you're trying to take. Um, and then to someone entering foster care, I mean, probably the same thing would be great. I do lean on my friend who has been doing foster care for longer. So I think having like an ally who has been there and done it and can give you the advice and can be mad at the system with you, who understands it, is really important too, because, um, you know, me having someone to bounce all that stuff off who can point me back to Christ and point me back to why we're doing this, and just give me like actual advice that's helpful and I can put to use has been like invaluable.
Talking about adoption specifically, let's kind of go back into that direction. What was that process like from going with an agency to getting P in your home? How long did that take and what was that process like?
So we officially applied and got accepted into our program in April of 2016. And we're filling out all the paperwork, everything. I mean, anything that you've ever done your whole life, you have to put into this paperwork. And we had that done about August of 2016. And so at that point, we were officially a family in waiting. And one of the things you do with all the paperwork is you put together a family lookbook, and it has pictures of your family, your house, the potential baby's room, your traditions, your faith, your beliefs, like all of it, so that when a mom is potentially choosing adoption for her child, that she can be given some family books to look through to see if there is a match for her that she feels like she would feel comfortable placing her child in. So that's the domestic infant adoption. So when by the time we got the call in February of 2017, P was already born. So for us, it was August to February, basically, of officially waiting. But paperwork to baby was April to February.
Okay. So then I don't know if you'll be able to share this. So I'm going to ask this and then we'll see and if you can't, that's fine. You can just say, I can't speak to that. But how did the mom choose you guys? I mean, did the caseworker have like that book that she was able to say, here are some families? Or was it like, hey, I know a family that is waiting and, maybe someone that you would like to talk with? Or how did that go down?
Yeah. So our Pia's birth mom is local. And so when she was choosing, the caseworker at our agency gave her several family books that were also somewhat local, so that there could be an open adoption, because that was always the plan from day one. Um, and so, yeah, she's presented with several just different family books to look through. And ultimately, what led her to choose us was not me. or my kids, but Matt, she just really connected with his love of music and his creative
Oh.
side that came through in our family book, because that parallels like some of her life.
Mhm.
Um, and that's how she chose us. Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt is, you actually shared, I think, a video on Instagram or in your stories or something where all the kids are at the table,
Yes.
everyone's banging on the table, singing together in this sweet song. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's just such a beautiful moment. But at the same time, I'm like, it's probably really loud in your house a lot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have no idea. It's so loud. It's
So is everybody singing all the time?
singing, or Matt brought home a drum set for one of my kids.
Oh gosh.
We have a piano. So yeah, I mean,
You have your
loud,
own band.
loud. I mean, that's his hope and dream for our family.
You can get a big bus and load up and just be the
I
traveling
know. I
Bowens.
know. I mean, we toy around with that 10-passenger van pretty often.
Oh
So,
yes. Well,
like,
especially
should
now
we
with,
do it?
oh yeah, there is so many people. Actually, in one of my podcast interviews, I talked with a mom who sold their house and bought a boat, and they're
Oh my
traveling the
goodness.
Great Loop, which my husband and I have discussed doing for retirement, but we were also toying with the idea of doing it like with the kids and stuff. Because the Great Loop, it goes like all up like New York and up into the Great
Mm-hmm.
Lakes, and then goes down intercoastal, like into
Oh
Tennessee and
man.
Alabama and stuff, and then out to Florida. And it's so cool. But yeah, there's so many people that are doing that, still in their homes and getting RVs and traveling. Cause it's like we're this whole year, everyone's just been locked inside. So it's like, well, if we're locked inside, we might as well just
Right.
go here. And so many
Yeah.
people
See
are
the
working.
world.
Yeah. And everyone's working remotely too. So
Mm-hmm.
more and more people are having that flexibility of being able to get up and go and stuff.
It's so true.
So this is not on my plan of something to discuss with you, but how is everything going with you guys with COVID? Because I know Matt is the music minister. Did
Yeah.
y'all, are y'all getting through everything okay?
Yeah. We are really fortunate to be close to family who also thinks like-minded um, as far as what they feel comfortable doing. So pretty much from the beginning, we have been able to still see my sisters and their children, which has been such a blessing. And I know that's a blessing that a lot of people have not had the privilege during this COVID. But yeah, so if we've just been really lucky to have our people still with us and to have this slower pace of life has really been good for our family.
That's so good. That's
Yeah.
so sweet. And then the addition of homeschooling and stuff too. You're building so many great memories this year too, all
Yeah.
together, in addition to making music as a family band.
Yes.
Okay, so we talked about what it was like adopting and advice you had. Could you share kind of the two different spectrums? What is something that was the most, like the best part of adoption and foster care, and what was the most challenging part of adoption and foster care?
Yeah. Um, one of the most challenging parts for adoption that also kind of turned into being one of the coolest parts was the fact that we couldn't afford it.
Mhm.
And in the adoption world, there is a lot of opinions on if fundraising is appropriate or not. But we did choose to fundraise for our adoption, so that was really humbling and hard. But the flip side was like we saw our people just rally around us and love on us and make sacrifices so that they could give financial gifts to help bring this baby home to us, including you, who hosted the Mary Kay virtual
That's right.
sales for us. So it was just, it was hard and it was humbling, but it also turned out to be just like really sweet way for people to come alongside us and for the Lord to show us that He's going to provide.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah,
then,
I forgot about that. I
yeah,
forgot about that a bit. Yeah. And you all had a
uh,
t-shirt and stuff too, I
we
remember, didn't you?
did. Yeah, I know. I still wear that T-shirt. It was
Yeah,
pretty
you
good.
should have worn it tonight.
Oh yes. And then foster care. One of the hard things that I knew, but it's different living it, is the like none of our kids are our own. Like the Lord has like is letting us raise these children, but in foster care, it's like a whole different level of reminder that these kids are not our own. So, um, just making decisions in the everyday and being like, oh, I can't do that because that's like against the rules. Like not getting haircut, like just the simple things that day to day, she's ours right now. And that's our thinking. But then when it comes to decisions, just like having to get approval, we're going on a family trip in 2 weeks, and it just hit me yesterday, like, oh, like I have to get this approved. Like we can't just like take our family and leave. Like I have to fill out the paperwork and get it approved. So that part's been hard. Just like resetting my mindset. Having people come in and out of my house all the time, that's been hard. They have to look through everything. And it's really hard to pick up a house when you have 5 kids. So also just like getting used to the house being messy and people seeing the mess has been hard.
Yeah.
There is so many sweet things that have come from participating in foster care, just getting the chance to love on this girl. There's obviously like difficulties too, but like she's precious and she makes it easy to fall in love with. I mean, everywhere we go, people are falling in love with this girl. Another hard thing, I think I'm like emphasizing the hard things because it really is hard.
Good. Right. But I think that's a good reality that people need to be aware of. Absolutely.
Yeah. They talk a lot about they, as in just like the adoption foster care world in general, about attachment and how there can be attachment issues with the child when they have been, moved homes or taken away from everything they knew. And that is all true and valid and important to educate yourself on. But one thing that has that I don't think is talked about enough is that it also goes the other way, that, like we bringing any child into our home, like we are going to love that kid hard, but to be in love, for us to feel attached is different, and it's something that we have to work at. And I think that has just been kind of shocking. Like we did not expect that. I think there's probably shame for a lot of people to like talk about that like maybe loving a kid in your home is hard and doesn't come naturally necessarily, but I do think it's important to address because that's the reality. And I don't think there should be shame in that, as long as it's being addressed and it's something that you're working on. So that has also been one of the hard pieces.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I think that is very open and honest, that a lot of people, and I think too in our culture, and I think it is we don't necessarily need to publicize everything to the whole world on Instagram all the time, especially things like that when you're going through stuff, but having close friends or family or somebody that you can talk to and express what you're going through openly and honestly, and not feeling shame or guilt or any of those things, because it is real. It's a real emotion that you really are feeling, and to be validated by those emotions is huge. Would you do me a favor? Would you subscribe to the show by clicking that subscribe button wherever you're listening? It makes a huge difference for the Lifestyle with Lauren community. I would also love for you to share this show with a friend. I know some of you found this show because a friend recommended it to you. So thank you for listening and being here, subscribing, liking, and sharing, and showing all of your love and support. Thank you. Music was provided for the show by Matt Bowen, and I'm your host, Lauren Greci. Now let's jump back into the conversation. So thank you for sharing that. Before I ask you my final 3 questions that I ask every guest, what is one final tip of advice, one maybe like unusual, weird, interesting thing that you've noticed during this whole process of adoption or foster care?
Oh man. Okay. The one thing that I also was not expecting, we adopted like transracially, like both our foster daughter and our adopted daughter are both Black. So one thing that I didn't think through was just the looks that we would get when we're out, and the
Really?
bold questions. Just people just like, they just lay it all out there and ask. And the first several times it caught me off guard, but like we have our answers now and we know what to say. And not out of being like, a lot of times it was sincere and not being rude, just maybe overly curious about our family. But I think we've kind of like learned to see that as an opportunity instead of like, oh my gosh, like you can't say that. So sometimes it's appropriate to, depending on what is said, to stand up for the little ears around that heard, but most of the time it's turned into like a good learning opportunity for everybody. So
I cannot imagine how bold people could be and say things like, I can only imagine what has been asked of you. And especially in front, like kids are always listening.
Yeah.
And it takes one comment for them to be like, wait a minute, Man, okay. Well, good. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right, so my 3 questions. What are you reading? What are you loving? And what is making you laugh?
Okay. I'm reading my dad actually, it's actually sitting right here. Nice. My dad bought for me the book, The Connected Parent, and it's actually talking about attachment, real life strategies for building trust and attachment. And I'm like only 2 chapters in, so I can't really speak to the content yet, but it kind of addresses what I was talking about, just and how attachment goes both ways. It's something that you have to work at for the child and for the parent. So that's what I'm reading, and I would suggest it. And I think that, it's not, the book isn't just for adopted or parents that are adopting or foster parents. I think that it's really a good book for anyone to read.
Okay. I will look into that one because that does sound really good. So then what are you loving right now? And it could be anything.
Okay. What am I loving? So I love putting the kids to bed and then, doing a quick cleanup and then getting to the couch and watching Netflix.
Yes. Okay. So then what's your show choice right
now? So we are watching Schitt's Creek right now.
Yeah.
Which is just hilarious.
It's so funny.
Yeah. So we're into that. And I like any crime show or hospital show, like that's the kind of my very like cliche genre that I'm into right now.
Have you watched those 2, like the Unabomber one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Did you see the Night Stalker? Did you watch that one?
We did, and
did you finish it?
It was a lot.
I can't finish it. I started it. It's so creepy. Like it's a horrible story too. As soon as, for people who haven't watched it, it's basically a true story. Yeah. But the guy was very random, and I think that's what made it really hard for the police and FBI to find him, because it was completely random people that he was, killing, but then also children. That just was like, done. I'm done. But it was weird, like whenever how they filmed it, and they'd be like looking at the city, and then they'd have the words going by, and it was like this creepy. Was it his voice?
Oh, I don't know. Was it? If it was, I didn't make that connection.
Okay, I assumed it was his voice, like because it was kind of like in that first person talking. And I was like, oh, it sounds like the devil is talking. I was like, I can't do it. I just was totally creeped out and couldn't finish it.
My like rule when we were watching that is like, that's not how I'm going to end the night. Yeah. Like we're going to end the night on like Schitt's Creek, because I need to not end the night on that heavy, scary.
Oh yeah. I told my husband, I was like, we need to find an I Love Lucy episode that I can watch after this.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Okay. So
and then,
what's making you laugh?
Making me laugh. I was thinking, I'm not easily, like, I don't laugh very much, to be honest, but those like nighttime around the dinner table where Matt gets all the kids going, banging on the table, like that brings me so much joy. It makes me laugh sometimes. just especially watching my youngest, like my little 1-year-old boy, just like with all his all his heart, just trying to keep up with his sisters and keeping beat even, is really fun to watch. And Matt's totally into Irish music right now, which I also think like that brings me joy and laughter. So yeah,
you should take up clogging, and then you can go right along with it.
I know. He actually did put on a YouTube video for clogging yesterday for the girls, and they were trying. So I think he has a lot of hopes for those kids.
You should tell him that I actually. I don't know if I should admit this. I, as a young teen, I guess, I don't know, I went and saw Lord of the Dance.
Wow! I love that. That's awesome. I'm definitely going to pass that along to Matt.
Yes, I loved it because I love dance, but I always envisioned myself as like, I want to do that. I want to learn how to do that, but there is no way. My old slow feet can't do that. No way.
It's a lot of work. Those people are in shape.
Oh, yeah. It's crazy. Well, Maddie, I've had so much fun talking with you tonight, and you have been so inspiring and encouraging, and I appreciate you sharing everything that you could share about foster care and adoption. And if somebody has any questions or wants to reach out to you regarding adoption or foster care, is there like an email address, or just reach out to you on Instagram? What would be the best way for someone to reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, email or Instagram. I keep my Instagram pretty locked down so that I can share, more details. But yeah, you can still send me a message there. Instagram or email is great.
Okay, perfect. Well, I will put all of your information there in the show notes, including these books that you mentioned. But thank you so much, Maddie. I appreciated you coming on.
Thanks for having me. It was fun catching up.
Thank you for listening to the Lifestyle with Lauren podcast. If you liked what you heard today, please subscribe, comment, leave a review, and share with your friends. Thank you so much. Music was created for the show by Matt Bowen, and I'm your host, Lauren Greci. I'll be back here next week with another wonderful conversation. Thanks for listening today. Bye, friends.